All right, so good day to all of you. So for this video, I decided to summarize all of the lessons, topics covered for the introduction to the philosophy of the human person for the first quarter. So this video shall serve as a reviewer and a supplement as you prepare for the periodical exams. So let's get started. Let's begin with Module 1, Doing Philosophy. This module introduces philosophy students to the nitty-gritty of philosophy, and at the same time, it gives a very general overview of what to expect in studying the philosophy of the human person. And so for this module, philosophy was defined as the science and art of everything. Considering that every body of knowledge that we study and encounter today all came from the very nature of questioning, which is the foundation of philosophy. So this very definition just fits right there. Now, philosophy has also been introduced for having five main branches. In other ways of teaching philosophical branches, there are way more than just five, but we'll just focus on what has been discussed. So let's begin with metaphysics, study of reality in existence, followed by epistemology, which focuses on the origin and source of knowledge, aesthetics, which talks about beauty and taste, logic, which focuses on reasoning and proper argumentation, and finally, ethics, concerning morality, what is right and what is wrong. It is also discussed in the same module how to reflect. So reflection as a fundamental human activity allows us to look back into our past experiences and examine, evaluate the intentions behind those actions and the outcomes, and whether those acts are something we're to do again or avoid in the future. And under reflection, we have two ways of looking uh, into things. We have holistic reasoning, which talks about a broader way of looking into things by understanding its full context, every possible aspect of it, every possible scenario that may have caused that event. And next to holistic is partial reasoning, the most common one. This is when we tend to just see a narrow aspect of the problem and do not necessarily go deep into the origin of a specific case or situation. We just make judgments based on what we see and how we feel about it without fully knowing the entire situation. So while it may somewhat appear that partial reasoning is bad and holistic reasoning is good, one cannot exist without the other. We always begin with partial reasoning because our intention is to look closely first, no, into the details before we try to look into the other aspects. So we always begin with partial, but we should end with a holistic perspective. Moving on, let's go to Module 2, Methods of Philosophizing. For this module, uh, there are several topics discussed here, and a lot of these topics revolve around the concepts of truth, knowledge, belief, facts, and opinions. So let's first begin with truth versus belief, the very foundation of this module, where it was discussed that truth is what the way the world actually is, and belief is a matter of our acceptance of things. So it's quite independent of the truth, if you'd ask me, no? So while there is truth, and truth will always be truth regardless, no? Belief is something that people are entitled to, people may start to think differently about things even though they've been presented with the facts. And this is where the theories of truth comes in. We're able to discuss three types of truths, no? Correspondence, coherence, and pragmatic, all coming from a different point of view when it comes to establishing truth. Correspondence is simply just being able to grasp truth with your senses. It's very evident. It's very empirical. Coherence, on the other hand, talks about the existence, the availability of several evidences to prove a certain claim. And while pragmatic talks about the usefulness of something for it to be considered true. Then, for the domains of truth, we have social, personal, and objective. So these are the basis of how do we categorize certain truths. For instance, social truths are truths that are reliant and relative to the culture of a certain community. It may vary from one community to the other. Personal, on the other hand, focuses more on our relationships with people on an individual basis. And so this has something to do with our own convictions. And finally, objective truth is the scientific truth. Truth that is independent from our feelings and beliefs, because this is the truth that is proven by science. Furthermore, we also talk about knowledge for this module. Here, you have different sources of knowledge. So knowledge is basically our awareness of truth, no? So it is knowledge if it's true. And so we might have different ways of seeing knowledge, no, or claim to know certain things, but there are also different sources of these things we know, starting with senses. I also have intuition, or our instincts, authority, no, sources of knowledge coming from platforms that are reputable or maybe not reputable in a sense, but they claim to be as one. And we have the last source of knowledge, which is reason. So for reason, we tackled the importance of knowing how to properly reason out using logic, no? And we discussed three, no, forms: deductive, inductive, and abductive. So magkakaiba sila ng approaches. Deductive is a general to particular kind of reasoning where you begin with a general inference down to a specific one, which makes every answer or conclusion certain. Meanwhile, inductive reasoning is the opposite of deductive, where we basically discuss things from a partial view that are very uncertain, speculative, probable, and of course, we'd end up with uncertain answers as well. Finally, we have abductive. The nature of this argument or reasoning is how we eliminate all of the least possible answers to a certain situation and come up with the best answer among the choices. And finally, for module 2, we also talk about opinions and arguments. So here, we define opinions as our expressions, no, of judgment towards anything. And so our opinions are subject to evaluation, and eventually when we argue or when we clash or when our opinions clash with others, no, we eventually form our arguments. Now, in arguments, it's important to note how to properly argue, because there will be instances that it may seem to be that we're arguing, but we're not. We're really not. And so this is where fallacies come in. No? Here, we talk about fake arguments or fallacies in which people appear to be arguing, but they're just actually committing a fallacy just to make it look like they know their thing. So just mention the fallacies we're able to talk about, which are appeal to emotion, appeal to threat, ad hominem, appeal to authority, missing the point, red herring, appeal to popular, fallacy of composition, division, hasty generalization, slippery slope, false cause, strawman, and spotlight fallacy. For Module 3, the embodied spirit, the topic is very simple. Here, the focus of the discussion is just about the difference of the human as a scientific being, as an organism, and the person as a spiritual being. That's why we call ourselves human persons, for the reason that we are organisms and at the same time we are spiritual beings. This is where the embodied spirit concept comes in which uh, from a spiritual level, there's always an argument that inside this organism, that is our body, we have a soul, we have a spirit that just ignites something inside us that just allows us to thrive, exist, and be able to do things that probably has nothing to do with us being organisms. So when we talk about us being embodied spirit, we literally refer to ourselves as spirits encased in a body. And given that, we have limitations to face. The following limitations are facticity, spatial temporal being, and the body as intermediary. When we say facticity, this is a kind of limitation where we're just limited to what we were born with. You were born with this certain condition, you were born to a certain family, to a certain context, to a certain nationality, to a certain country, and so on and so forth. So these are the things that are beyond our control. And facticity also includes the very fact that we were born because none of us asked to be born. All right. So none of us, even our parents, none of us have this agency to actually choose whether we'd like to be given birth to or not. No? So that's the point of facticity. Spatial temporal being, on the other hand, is uh, about our limitation as to when and where we can appear at a given time. So we cannot be everywhere all at once, no? We cannot be omnipotent, no? We cannot be present in various scenarios in the same universe. So the point here is our bodies limit us from being able to be present physically in several places. And so we have to decide on things based on that limit.